Welcome everyone to the Wake Up Call channel. What better way to celebrate our country's Independence Day than for our own government to once again set its civilians and their homes on fire? It's a common theme in the United States of America now, of course, because the weather's getting so warm that we're supposed to believe that these natural wildfires just continue to start. And we're not allowed, of course, to ask questions about it, especially after we see one in Lahaina that couldn't look more unnatural. Or when we see one in California in the year 2018, which I'm about to cover again, since the current wildfire that was just started, believe it or not, right, because it's so coincidental, happens to be directly next to, that's right, directly next to Paradise, California. So clearly we see that there's a targeted area that they are trying to wipe out, because there's no such thing in this world as coincidences. And it was proven to us both times that it was a directed energy weapon. The civilians knew it was a directed energy weapon. The way that things melted proved that no wildfire could ever get that hot to cause metal to melt and everything around it to melt the way that it did. And of course, the most common theme that we keep seeing with these wink wink wildfires, which we're told are supposed to start with like trees and dryness, right? Well, most of the trees end up miraculously not even catching fire. We saw it in Maui, we saw it in Texas, we're seeing it again in California. You just see communities of homes burned to the ground where people are forced into evacuating, and of course need to be thankful that Big Brother is setting up FEMA right over there for them to come to their FEMA facilities, and be thankful that they at least have that when it's their government themselves who's responsible for burning their homes and their property completely to the ground, and of course taking the lives of innocent civilians and their pets as well. So let's take a look at the wildfire evacuations and this non-natural fire, what they're calling the Thompson Fire in California. Keep in mind how close this fire is to the Paradise Fire. It's literally one county over. So wouldn't that tell us that they're targeting a specific area in California? And you know what else is interesting about it? How the people on the news just, at the end of this video, let us know with duping delight that 4th of July fireworks may reignite some of the fire, in case anybody gets suspicious as to why the fires start up again during 4th of July celebration. That's because, of course, illegal fireworks will be going off, and that would just randomly cause the fire to accelerate. Look at this.
Firefighters in Northern California are dealing with that sweltering heat as they try to get a handle on a fire that is burning out of control right now. It is forcing tens of thousands of evacuations. The governor has declared a state of emergency as the flames threaten homes. CBS's Elise Preston is on the scene tonight in Oroville, about 70 miles north of Sacramento.
Intense flames fanned by strong winds, bone-dry brush, and extreme heat exploded to more than 3,500 acres overnight. The trail of destruction includes cars, homes, and structures. About 28,000 people were forced to flee.
And we had giant embers dropping on the driveway, and I said, okay, we got to go.
Firefighters are going through burned out neighborhoods looking for hotspots, hoping flames don't reignite and take down homes that are still standing.
The Thompson Fire is in the same county as Paradise, site of one of the deadliest fires in California history. Today, more than 1,400 firefighters are mounting a full-scale assault, using Lake Oroville, California's second largest reservoir, to make water drops, but also dealing with unforgiving temperatures that are only expected to get hotter in the coming days. It's a nightmare scenario, and this fast-moving fire remains out of control.
I'm just going to sit here for as long as it takes and pray that it's over soon.
Now, this is one of at least 3 homes reduced to ash and rubble. Only a chimney remains standing. As we head into the holiday weekend, area fireworks shows are canceled, but firefighters are concerned illegal fireworks could set off even more destruction. Adriana?
People have lost everything. Elise Preston, thank you.
People have lost everything. You're right, people have lost everything. But you don't expect sympathy from the Tavistock CIA news agent who, of course, is just playing a role on television to make you think that all of these things are just a devastating natural fire. And what a better time to do it than when it hits 100 plus degrees in California, because they know that the sheeple out there will hear this and they'll hear a video like mine and they will completely, automatically, because they've been trained to, dismiss it. And they will believe what the fake news, which is every single news station out there, not just Fox or CNN, not just liberal versus conservative. It's all fake, formulated to convince you that these things happening are natural. And the governments around the earth right now are using weather against their civilians. So some of the pictures that we see, like the ones I'm flashing on your screen, right? We have homes burning completely to the ground. As you saw in the clip, homes completely burned to the ground. But trees, somehow these trees, and of course, we'll get some scientific answers from the people out there who refuse to believe what's actually going on by telling us, well, there's some moisture in the trees. Oh, there's no moisture. Right, okay, sure. Because they want to believe that wildfires started in nature, which are burning homes to the ground. All the trees somehow survive, but the homes don't. And then the people who are evacuated end up in FEMA camps, never to return to their homes. Now, you will also notice trees standing up while cars are completely on fire. Almost like the cars were doused with gasoline, or, of course, hit with a directed energy weapon, because it would need enough power from that directed energy weapon to make it look like an explosion from a Michael Bay movie. But some of the photos that they release, I mean, it's almost like they rub it in our faces. The trees next to the cars are completely untouched. None of them are catching fire, but the cars just are exploding. They're exploding. Now, for those of you who aren't aware of what directed energy weapons are, these are the things they've conditioned you through mind control over the years to think are fake. This is why in movies you hear things like in Austin Powers, space laser beams, and they want you to dismiss all this stuff, but you could actually look up yourself, Lockheed Martin, all these military, all the military around the earth happens to have their own directed energy weapons, and we all wait and wonder what they're going to be used for. Oh, wait, no, we don't, because we know they're being used against us to be blamed, of course, on climate change and wildfire. The other thing that we've seen over the years are these drones that have been starting fires as well, which is another way for them to get away with this stuff, using drones, sending them out. I covered this National Fire Center, put out this thing last year. There have been 14 reported drone intrusions over wildfires in 2023. So far this year, wildfire air operations have been shut down 8 times on incidents due to unauthorized drone use. So just random drones were popping up in all these areas that there were wildfires. What could they have been doing? I guess, you know what? It must have just been civilians. They wanted to send their drone up to take photographs of the fire so they could upload it to their Instagram accounts or their YouTube channels, right? Don't be suspicious when there's unauthorized drones flying around, when you literally can buy drones that have flamethrowers on them now without even needing a license or anything else to do it, right? So we know they have the ability to do these things. And of course, some of you may say, well, if they're going to use drone, I mean, do they have an accelerant? Now, the accelerant, of course, is the aluminum dust, which I've covered over the years. The accelerant is what's being dumped on us in the sky. It serves as an accelerant. Aluminum dust is an accelerant, okay? It's being dumped on us every single day, and it's specifically being dumped and doused over these areas that they're targeting when they decide that they want to light them on fire. So one of the other things, too, with this coincidental fire that happens to be right next to Paradise that I covered was that all these articles came out last year that talked about brain changes among survivors of California's deadliest wildfire. Not talking so much about depression, which of course was one of the topics, and mental health, which you could actually understand. You know, if your house and your pets got burnt alive and burnt to the ground, it would affect your mental health. I think you would go into a pretty deep depression. Now, if you actually realize who was doing it, well, your mind might explode when you realize that these are not caused by wildfires. They're caused by Big Brother. But the studies they were releasing were actually talking about changes to the human brain. They were actually calling it fire brain, saying that people were having brain problems. There were symptoms along the lines of confusion, disorientation, seizures, changes in personality, behavior, difficulty speaking. Well, these are some of the symptoms for people with fire brain. So all of a sudden in the history of humanity, we have now diseases associated with fire. right? Now, we know that there could be diseases, of course, associated with fire, like, burns, or, of course, inhaling the smoke from the fire could cause massive, major effects to you long-term and short-term. But now there's these new symptoms that come into play. And why are there new symptoms, you might ask? Why all of a sudden are people having like forgetfulness, dementia, changes in personality and behavior? That's because they're getting hit with microwave frequencies. Now, they, of course, won't tell you that because they don't want you to figure out what's going on. But the reason is because it's radiation exposure, okay? It's the equivalent of getting exposed to massive amounts of radiation. That's what it is. So they had to develop what they're calling fire brain so that they could give an excuse as to why people who are victims just specifically in the Lahaina fires and the Paradise fires, people who lived in those areas, were suffering for what they're calling fire brain. Now, how convenient is that? All of a sudden, right? Now, if you happen to have a little fire maybe in your barbecue this 4th of July, and you get a little bit close and you don't get burned, don't worry. You're not going to get fire brain because it's not the same kind of fire. You see, that's just a regular fire. But when you get one from a microwave frequency, well, of course, then you get fire brain. And this is how you play it off to the dumbed down masses. You tell them, well, this is, part of their mental health. They're disoriented because they're in such shock. Then don't worry about the fact that they're having seizures, they're having fits, they're having changes permanently in their personality, and they're, of course, having difficulty speaking, right? Loss of movements in some part of the body, right? It's like I often tell people who they just don't understand radiation, right? And they don't want to learn about radiation. And I tell them, when you go to the dentist, they throw that thing on your chest that weighs like 75 pounds. I'm sure everybody's been there at some point, right? When you get your x-rays, or if you go to the hospital and you get x-rays, right? You get covered in this to prevent radiation exposure. And nobody asks any questions then, right? Now, don't you get a little, if you start thinking about it, right? What ends up happening? Nothing, right? Because you just get pictures taken. It's not like you're putting this big coat on and you're about to get run through a lightning storm. You're just sitting there, and then they take pictures of your teeth, and then they take this 100-pound coat off of your chest, right? That's to prevent radiation exposure from the pictures that are being taken. Of course, these are things you can't see, right? You can't see the radiation coming out, right? And nobody asks any questions about that. They're like, well, that's perfectly normal. But you don't think that they would use radiation as a weapon? You don't think radiation is dangerous to you? People are like, radiation exposure is not that dangerous. Cell phone exposure radiation is not that dangerous. Well, when you go to the dentist for 5 seconds and they put that on you to take pictures of your teeth, okay, they're doing it as a preventative measure from you getting exposed to radiation. So what about your cell phone? What about, these other things that are being used like directed energy weapons, which are going to, if you're not going to get melted by the direct energy weapon, if the directed energy weapon doesn't just fry you in your place there and turn you into dust, well, there's going to be long-term effects. Why? Because you're exposed to massive, massive, massive amounts of radiation. These are things they don't want you to think of or realize. It's easier to just dismiss every single fire as natural. And now, of course, as we've been discussing on this channel, and all of you already know, there's going to be a massive ramp up in all of this climate stuff to bring in climate laws, which people out there just, I tell them about it, they just roll their eyes like it's not going to happen. Same thing occurred right before the outbreak. Warned them about it before the outbreak, warned them for about 10 years before, because we were all expecting it even in 2014, even with things like Ebola, we thought it was coming, and finally it came, right? Told them there'd be lockdowns, all this other stuff. It happened and they didn't blink. Telling them now about this, they're like, they won't do that over the climate, right? And now we're going to see the ramp up where there's going to be more and more wildfires, where they can make it believable. There are going to be more and more tornadoes and earthquakes. And eventually, like I said in a previous video, they're going to have some catastrophic one that makes people go, whoa, that's a freakish thing. There is a problem here, which would be an earthquake in a place like New York City, which they already did a test run on right here in 2024. So that's what we could expect in the future. And people just see this stuff and they think that it's natural because they've been programmed to think that it's Mother Nature. Yet you can look up for yourself that the governments all have directed energy weapons, then ask yourself, well, if all these wars and all this stuff is going on, then why don't they use it against their enemies? Why doesn't Putin use it against Ukraine, right? Or Ukraine against Russia, right? Why don't they do that? Well, they're all working together against the civilians. So why would they do that? They're not trying to end any war. They're just trying to enslave humanity. And they're going to do it using something that they can never get caught doing, which is the climate agenda, because nobody will understand it. Nobody could wrap their heads around it. And it's very intricate. And only people with eyes to see and ears to hear can understand this layered thing that they're doing. The first thing you got to understand is weaponized weather and directed energy weapons. And then the facade of what they're calling climate change, and realize that they're attacking civilians, rounding them up into FEMA camps, and then herding them into places they want them to be herded into, which will be smart cities, etc. So everybody out in California, I'm sure, is, if you're not suspicious, I don't know, I can't imagine like what's inside your head other than raisins. But when you look at the locations of the two, what are the odds of people just go, oh, there's tremendous odds. Oh, there's tremendous odds. There's very slim odds that these would be right next to one another. Okay, there aren't any such thing in this world as coincidences. This tells us that that area there specifically might be the spot for a massive, massive, massive smart city or something else in that specific area. Maybe there's resources that they want to get to over there that they don't want civilians near. But the simple fact of the matter is that's a targeted area right up there in Northern California. And none of this stuff is a coincidence, folks. This is being done by design. Prayers for anybody out there affected by this. I can't imagine going through something like this, suffering something like this, and then on top of it, having to deal with the exposure to the radiation that most of these people are dealing with. But we're dealing with wicked, sinister people, unlike the likes that we've ever seen before. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. Stay safe, and God bless you and your families as always.